Chapter 7. The Chief. Bard, a voice whispered harshly. It sounded again, and Bard rolled over to look at the door, with his bleary eyes in the dark. He could barely make out the silhouette of a short person at the door. "Ruger?" he asked, and the man shifted over to Sen's bedside, shaking her shoulder. "Sen?" Ruger called to her, and Bard was about to turn and rest, if not fall asleep, again when Ruger gave his leg a kick. Bard winced and rolled to face the man. In the firelight that now came in, he saw the toothy grin. "I knows ye want more sleep, but ye best be jettin' up," Ruger chuckled. Bard sighed and then pulled on his leathers and the shawl-like poncho. Sen stirred and, seeing the men moving about, grabbed her own layers. Bard turned away, wondering when she had taken those off. When she was up as well, Ruger invited them out. Away from the windows sat Elvira. Bard noticed Kai's fur against the window, that would be able to see that particular corner of the room. Opposite Elvira was someone Bard didn't recognize, a burly man wearing furs, laden with melting snow. He brushed the water off as Elvira motioned for them to come over. "Chief, this is Bard, the one we mentioned," Elvira said, talking to the man. "I'm your..." "Fine," the chief relented. It seemed to be an ongoing argument, one that Bard was not willing to pry into. He turned to Bard and held out his hand in greeting. "I'm the chief of this village. Thank you for keeping them company this winter and helping with the fiasco earlier." "I'm Bard," Bard answered, taking the hand. The man shook it and then extended it to Sen. She copied the movement and introduced herself. "Sen, a pleasure. You can let your hair down. I've already been told about you." "Welcome to our village," the chief said, and Sen looked in surprise, then turned to Bard, who was equally shocked, and then shrugged. "Elvira?" Sen asked, and Elvira chuckled. "Your reservation is expected, but it's fine. This is my old man, and he's frankly on our side. We explained about the shades, and he wants to help us. But, are you not sick?" "Hardly, though. I do often have aches and pains in the winter, and it leaves me bedridden a lot. I do what I can to preserve my life and protect my people," the chief answered. "Oh." Sen's curiosity seemed to grow as she took down her messy braid, and then let it flow apart the way her hairs wanted. "Incredible," the chief muttered, and Sen looked away bashful. Bard cleared his throat and the chief stood. "Please, come sit," he indicated to the two of them, and they sat where he had been. Elvira shifted as the chief sat next to her, and Ruger sat at the head of the table. "I've been filled in on the situation," the chief said as he looked at Ruger and Elvira, who nodded. "You need to convince the people and my son to have sunstones used and set up in key locations to protect us against what? Against the destruction that Shade, the six-eyed one, is capable of moving past light, particularly firelight. But so far, sunstone light seems to affect it." Bard answered. "And you know this. How?" "He's traveled with the catfolk, and other places," Sen answered, and Bard's side grinned. Her inferring was on point. The chief looked at him to confirm, and he nodded. "I see. Then we need a stratagem to convince them. Is that why you are here?" Sen asked, a yawn slipping out. "Yes," the chief said, looking apologetic as he watched her rub her eyes. "I'm afraid this might go long into the morning." "We'll be fine," Bard assured, and the chief nodded. They would have to be fine with this. It was unlikely they would see him again anytime soon. The talk turned to ways Holger employed to strangle the people into submission, and the chief listened with a knowing look. Sen's face contorted at each revelation from Ruger and Elvira. "How can you be okay with this?" she asked pointedly at the chief. "I'm not, but I'm also not so young anymore. My wounds and limbs barely let me swing a weapon around anymore, let alone confront him. He often threatens me, but keeps me around to placate the people and ask advice. He is somewhat brash," the chief answered, starting with a bristling roar to a humble and sudden mutter. Sen's mouth formed an O, and she sat back, a bit more quiet. It wasn't just his words that had struck them. His tone changes said a lot about the struggle he had as a parent, a leader, and more. Bard pitied him, and smiled wanly. "Is there anything that typically drives Holger to do what he does?" Bard asked, changing the subject and looking for motives. "He is rather rebellious. If I put my advice forward, he likes to do the opposite and then gloat when he gets a favorable outcome," the chief answered. Elvira's shoulders rose. "I hate when he does that," she chimed in. Bard stopped listening as his mind began to concoct a plan. Sen noticed and signaled to the others to pause. "Have ye got an idea?" Ruger asked, and Bard shrugged. It was rudimentary, but perhaps, if he is as rebellious as you say, then wouldn't it be a good idea to tell him to avoid sunstones? Why would he change that? Elvira asked. What if we tried to give them to people? Sen asked. It's a bit basic. No, Bard is onto something. We could have you two pass as traveling merchants, who are trying to sell the catfolk's wares for them in this region. We've had them before. The chief pondered. And you would advise Holger to scare us off? To not have the people or him buy the sunstones? Bard asked. And that would work? Sen asked. Elvira and Ruger were hiding their laughter, but failing. Oh, it'd be working too well. Ruger laughed. The chief raised his hand and Elvira and Ruger sobered. Clearly the three of them didn't think too highly of Holger's intelligence. It was saddening to Bard that someone with that sort of mentality was leading all those people. You both realize we wouldn't be in this situation if you hadn't refused to be chief, the chief said as he looked at Elvira. A complex expression of bitterness and anger, along with regret, was hard to watch. That's in the past, Elvira noted. Besides, I wouldn't have done better. While it would be different, I would neglect our people as well. You understand why? The chief's long sigh echoed for a bit before Sen spoke up. Why doesn't Bard lead? She asked, and Bard panicked as he covered her mouth with his hand. Nope, not happening, he said, and Elvira chuckled once at the reaction. The lass has a point. Ye be better than the rest of us, Ruger said. I'm a complete outsider. It wouldn't work. Well, you won't be selling any goods unless you get a bit more familiar with the locals, and it would be wise to have Sen led out on that, the chief spoke. But we've been trying to hide her from Holger. Will be more likely to rebel to strike her favor and woe her, though I am told she is already wed, the chief said as he looked at Bard. Sen blushed as she sat meekly. I can't have her. I'll do it, Sen said over Bard's words. Sen, Bard hissed, and she frowned as she stared him down. I'm going to help too. I can't leave it all to you. I certainly don't want to stay cooped up in that room, and I am sure you don't want that either. Besides, I'm far more capable a warrior than you. Her hair shifted around her face as if to make points about her words. Bard was initially surprised, but very distracted by her hair, almost laughing at it. She looked hurt at his reaction and he reached over for her hair. It shied away and he chuckled. I've never even seen you wield anything besides the bow. How would you protect yourself? He asked, and Sen rolled her eyes. Give me a dagger and a short sword. That will be sufficient. A bag of seed would also help. Her hair seemed to bristle, a new sight for him. You're right, sorry. Does your hair react to your words? He asked, and she huffed and looked away. The others' laughter didn't help. He reached for her hand, and she tugged at her hair. Stupid things always move at the wrong time. Maybe dead hair is better after all, she commented, and Bard shrugged. It was one of the things he was coming to enjoy. When he looked at the chief and the others' glances, he felt a bit self-conscious. Back now? Ruger asked, and even Bard felt a bit of embarrassment. Ruger was the only one here who knew they weren't married yet, and was fueling the misunderstanding. Yes? Bard cleared his throat and Sen sat very meekly beside him. I don't agree, but if Sen wants to help, then I think we should have some backup plans in case something goes astray. They talked over potentials, and the style of merchant that would lead Holger into purchasing the sunstones, and setting them up with many of the villagers. Sen showed off her skills with the short sword. The chief had to assuage Bard's fears. It was the sort of convincing he found was quite painful. Bard's worries extended initially. What if they didn't have enough sunstones for the village? That's when Ruger had them redo Sen's hair and guided them outside to his workshop. Inside was a plethora of sunstones, varying sizes and quantities. Most worked for only a portion of the night, and that would help. Only a few worked for the whole night, and despite Bard's desire for long-lasting sunstones for their own journey, he had options. Those same options were not available for the villagers, and without sunstones, they wouldn't last long against the shades.